Well, thank you for joining us again. Patrick Ellis here with our weekly ECONversations with our economic development gurus here in Southwest Riverside County in general. Glad to have you with us again this week. I think this week we're going to kick it off. We're going to have a great discussion with Kimberly Davidson with the city of Wildomar, Grant Taylor with the city of Lake Elsinore, Christine Damko with the city of Temecula, Scott Agajanian with the city of Murrieta, and Mr. Moran with the county of Riverside. And I think we're going to talk today about automation and maybe how that's playing out in kind of our current market that we're dealing with. I know that a couple of months ago, I had a very interesting conversation with Dr. Munoz from University of Redlands, who's considered one of the experts in automation and kind of the future of automation in business right now. And he had said that obviously with kind of our current state that automation is now going to get ramped up probably quicker than it was. So what we were talking that is probably going to be coming in 5 to 6 years is probably going to be coming in a year or two now. So obviously that changes the dynamic on, what's going on in each one of our communities and how we look at that affecting, future business. So, maybe Rob, if you want to kind of give us your perspective on a countywide level, and then maybe everyone can kind of pitch in on kind of what they're seeing in their communities or what they're utilizing to kind of keep that in mind moving forward.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that, and we were just talking a minute or so ago about bringing it up, but I didn't realize it would be the whole agenda, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Hey,
but no,
throw it out there, we make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, automation was certainly something that was, it's already obviously in process, and we've been living with automation for years and years, and it's accelerating and changing. A lot of times when people think about that, they go to the self-driving car and drones that carry everything. And certainly that's, probably something that's down the road and in development. And I think people expected, those sorts of things to come sooner. But I think what we're, seeing that will, I think, be deployed rapidly, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, human beings are fallible. We do get sick and we die and we don't show up for work. And that's just, part of the human condition. Is you're going to see a lot more, and I think a more rapid deployment of automation as a result of the dreaded C word, which I promised not to say, or I think we promised not to say today, but you know what I'm talking about. And I think business is going to figure out how to use that. And for example, one simple application of that, and it is you walk into a restaurant today, and rather than have a server come up to you, you scan a QR code and you get the full menu with all the different options. And again, it's a very simple application. I think you're going to see more and more of that as, restaurants and other retail facilities try to become more efficient, which ultimately ends up in a cost savings. I think that I saw something on the news the other day where there was an automated or robotic hamburger flipper. It was just a robotic arm with a spatula. And I think ultimately you're going to see those types of facilities where they're basically repetitive motion activities. They're going to be automated. You go into a McDonald's today, for example, and there used to be maybe 5 or 6 people at the counter. Now there's 1 or 2. And then you go to 4 or 5 different electronic kiosks where you can order everything. And those are the types of things we just sort of get used to on a day-to-day basis. And then you look back and say, holy cow, there's not, 5 or 6 teenagers there with their first job that are learning, how to interface with customers and deal with people and, getting work experience. It's usually somebody behind the counter that's got decades of work experience that, is working there now. And there's only 1 or 2. And I think we're going to start to see more and more of that. Again, we've been living with it for years at other retail stores where, the number of cashiers has been reduced with more and more, self-serve or self-checkout. Even Costco's now, deploying that technology, which is actually old, frankly. But I think there's just new ways that we're going to see From a cost saving standpoint and a reliability standpoint, I think more and more businesses are going to start to deploy it. I think I saw recently a Fortune 500 survey. They said something like 70% of the CEOs, and I could be wrong on that number, but it was a high number, basically saying they expect that as a result of the pandemic that, deployment of technology is going to be rapidly increase. And this is one example right here. Business travel. I think the same group of CEOs said they're going to do a lot less business travel now because you can just hop on a Zoom call, and why go travel across the country for that? So maybe you only do that once a year instead of 4 or 5 times a year. And I think we're going to start to see just more and more of it. And it'll be implemented on a day-to-day basis. It's a restaurateur who's buying, their products from a supplier. Well, they may not have to fly out to the Midwest to meet with the meat company. They can just hop on a Zoom call. So, I think it's, generally speaking, it's just something we're going to see, that's something that this pandemic, I think, is going to certainly accelerate. And we've crossed some barriers and thresholds that we didn't maybe see deployed as quickly or as fully as we are now. So I'm just bouncing all over the place with this, but just some kind of thoughts.
I think it's good thoughts. I think Rob's spot on. It's the wave of the future for businesses, for cost saving, social distancing, safety. It's going to be a self-serve world where you come in, you got a board, a menu, computer, electronics, you type in what you want, you self-serve. There's just fewer people, saves money for the businesses, safe for everybody. It's just a way of doing business. Before the COVID, I was almost out of business cards, ordered a big box, and with the Zoom and the Teams meetings, I still have the full box. You just don't have regular meetings anymore. It's all through Zoom and Teams, and it's the wave of the future for businesses to survive and thrive.
I think that, Rob, the one thing that you mentioned that I think a lot of people weren't necessarily looking to do, which is the QR code thing, right? In restaurants, right? You go into a restaurant and you use the QR code and you bring everything up on your phone. You can do everything by your phone. I think a lot of restaurants prior to this were hesitant to go to something like that, right? That wasn't personable enough for them, or it wasn't, it didn't have the feel that they wanted. But I think a lot of them now are, obviously having to do things like that, but are now understanding the power of that, in that, one, it helps them business-wise, right? Because they know the order gets put in right because the person's putting it in themselves. 2, it's a time management issue for everybody involved. And 3, that's what people want, is they want to be able to do some things themselves and have that interaction. So I think some of them, they were so hesitant to go into it that now they're like, why didn't I do this before, right? Why did I wait so long to do certain things?
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to that point, right? Of now we probably will see some things ramp up quicker because people are going to be more open and willing to try these different things and new things and such.
I think, though, as we move forward, right now it's fine. The automation is fine because it's what's needed during the whole COVID shutdown. But as we move forward, what I have really come to know as I go out to eat, if you're going through, a drive-through just to get some take home for dinner or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're going to a restaurant, a huge part of that I've realized is missing during this whole COVID shutdown is the experience. And you're not getting that experience the same when you're ordering off the QR code on your phone. So, and again, I understand that's where we are because of the shutdown. And so I'm not critiquing it based on that, but going forward in a world where we aren't in a COVID shutdown anymore, it's going to be interesting to see how restaurants in particular and hospitality and service type industries utilize automation, where they found that they don't have to have the same amount of staff maybe, and they don't have to hire the same type of for the same type of positions that they did prior to all of this and go to an online, the QR code ordering system, because there is an element that's lost. There are pros and cons to it. I like that the bill is already paid. You're not sitting there waiting for it. That's always been my one big complaint with restaurants. You're always sitting there waiting, like they know they brought you your last glass of water or whatever, and then you're like, they don't come back, to give you your bill, and you're kind of held hostage there. So it's nice that you can take care of that part yourself. But what I find is, as we're at a restaurant with the QR code and we're waiting for someone to go by because we need to ask them a question about either how to use the system or something about, so there is a human element that's lost in all of that automation for sure. And I think for some industries, it's not going to matter. Again, if you're just going through the drive-through and you're trying to get a couple of hamburgers and fries to go home, you're not looking for an experience. You're looking for a quick and easy, get in, get out, and get home to your family with your stuff. But if you're going to sit at a restaurant, especially some of the higher end restaurants we have around here, you do want that experience. It's more of an experience. Frankly, I don't like going to pick up to-go orders from some of our higher end restaurants because it's the experience that I want. It's not about the food necessarily, although the food is a nice perk. It's the atmosphere, it's the great customer service, and it's the whole experience surrounding that. And that's definitely been missing during all of this COVID shutdown.
And I think you're right, Kim. There's certain, even within certain sectors, I think those higher end restaurants that you're describing probably won't be able to get away with that, because you're going there for more than just the food. You're going there for, you want to be treated well. You want someone to come and essentially cater to you. I think it's going to be more of the mid-range. Of course, the lower end restaurants or, lower, fast food, fast casual, they sort of already do that because you have to order yourself. But I think a broader range, but I agree with you. I don't think that'll apply to the sort of the higher end restaurants, because that's not why people go there. That's my opinion anyway.
Well, I just want to say, 3 years ago, I was replaced with a cybernetic organism, and I don't think you guys have noticed the difference at all. So I find it interesting that we're talking about, mechanization.
Can we get a software upgrade?
Exactly. An old model. We've immediately kind of turned towards Flippy, the hamburger flipper, and what it looks like for a restaurant world, because right now, the biggest changes I think are prevalent in restaurants. But there's a lot of change that's going to happen with a mechanized world, and we've been talking about this for a long time in manufacturing and industrial, trending out to retail. But in reality, there's going to be a wave of jobs that are replaced and a new wave of jobs that are going to come in. And I think the really interesting pieces of this is our region, how it's embraced a manufacturing world, and what that's going to look like in a decade, right? The jobs that are here now and the jobs that will be here then. A lot of times they say you can't predict the jobs of the future, but I think we actually kind of have a pretty good idea. This all ties into this big technological revolution, right? That I don't think that there's a start and end point to it yet. We started off with the internet and computers, and now all of a sudden we have cell phones and smartphones and AI and mechanization and automation. And it's all one part of a big continuous job chain that I think we're seeing great wealth creation, but great job opportunity that's going to come from it. And a lot of times the talk track runs the opposite, which is what we're going to see is the end of jobs because of mechanization. And I believe just the opposite. I think we're going to see the beginning of really good jobs because of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in what you guys think about that.
In fact, Scott, when I would take, at a different city that I worked at, when I would take people on a tour of a particular manufacturing plant, the owner of that manufacturing plant was always sure to point out the new robotic arms that he had installed, and that he had to hire 2 new people per arm to run the robotic arm. Right. So in that particular manufacturer's case, he was having to add more highly skilled workers to assist the robotic arm than if he hadn't added that robotic arm to begin with. Now, the robotic arm was completing a more productive schedule. That's why there was a point to it, but it certainly did not cut down on the number of jobs in that manufacturing facility.
Yeah, it's the exponential output that you get.
So to that end, if we're going to be automating, some of these maybe more entry-level jobs that are maybe more routine in nature, like I used the fast food example, some of these other jobs that are being created that maybe are more in the logistics or manufacturing space, it would seem to me then that some of those businesses, those typically are not entry-level jobs, right? They're not the first place somebody goes to work. And so, and if that becomes the case, because it's just the only option there is, that some of those employers are going to have to focus, more on, not just on the training for the, the hard skills for operating the robotic arm or doing whatever, but they're going to get some people that need help with the soft skills, right? The 16-year-old kid's not going to learn, or 18-year-old or whatever age, is not going to learn you can't be late at McDonald's. They're going to learn it at ABC Manufacturing, possibly. So it would seem, if we're sort of shifting it from more of a retail sort of sector to perhaps maybe manufacturing or some other space, that, some of those businesses are going to have to be better prepared to deal with some of those soft skill issues. And I know they already are, but you know what I mean? They're going to get first timers more so than, again, McDonald's, let's say. How do you guys feel about that?
I agree. I think soft skills is the number one. At the end of all of this, I think automation is just going to be a part of the puzzle. It's going to be a piece of the pie. But soft skills are always the biggest piece, right? It's everything we do is relational. Kim, you talked about it with your dining experiences. Everything that we do is relational, even when there's a mechanical entry point somewhere along the lines. Grant, when you talk about Zooms and we talk about travel, it's still building that relationship. And the telephone didn't end the relationships. We thought that was the end of family. Television didn't end relationships. None of this ends relationships. It still has to be a part of the way that we act and a part of our dynamic. And so soft skills are always going to be a key to that. And so I don't think they become less important. They become more important. There's just a greater wealth. This is, once again, another case where businesses have to be more prepared for even more technological need and even more responsibility upon them in order to run their business and be competitive. But Christine,
I was going to say,
what
I'm
do you think?
Christine to chime
It's her
in.
turn. She was waiting for Scott to shut up.
I don't want to jump in ahead of her.
I was like, we've been talking about automation for a few years right now. I know we all on this Zoom call, we have been talking about it too, in particular with logistics, the logistics sector, healthcare, and hospitality. Those are the three, I think, sectors that are most apt to being automated. At least that's what the economic forecasters are telling us. So obviously tourism is an important part of our economy. And so we have already been seeing technology weave into our business community. You can basically book a hotel room and go into your room without talking to a single employee in Temecula. And I know you can do that in other cities as well. But they also, in terms of Kimberly's aspect of getting that, there are some people who want that human interaction. They do have front office staff, if you will. There's just less of them. So that has been happening for a few years. And actually just last week, Quick Burger, it's a first of its kind prototype. I guess he's aimed at wanting to franchise this concept out, opened on the south end of town. And they have 3 drive-through lanes, and with entirely touch screens. So you don't talk to a person at all. Like, there's no way you can talk to a person when you order your food. They have a pickup window if you need to talk to someone, where you can actually walk up to a window and talk to someone, but otherwise you go and you don't see a human until you check out and pay essentially in your car. And then also I'd like to point out in regards to manufacturing, because I know advanced manufacturing is a large component in our region. Abbott, one of the region's largest manufacturers, they were a product of automation and fluctuating staffing, and that gave way to whole empty buildings over, a large sum of leftover square footage that is now the MSJC towers. But probably over 15 years ago, their employee count, their actual operations was different, and now that part is automated. So I think it's something huge. I think it's something that as us working together regionally, that we constantly need to be aware of, and I know it is, and we keep it in the back of our head, because how do we diversify our economy and make sure that, with one swoop of a latest technology, that it doesn't put out a large sector of our economy and wipe us out. So it is, I know when people talk about or think about automation, they kind of think of like the George Jetsons of type, at least I do in my head, but it really is I don't want to say it's a threat, because we should embrace it, but it is something that warrants a strategic think tank, if you will, about how our region, and actually every region, is going to deal with this constant change of technology.
Yeah.
Well, all I can think about now is the Jetsons song, "Thank You, Christine," because that'll be in my head the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And I finally pushed it out.
Thinking about ordering something from Quick Burger.
Yeah.
I'm definitely trying that place.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And back to what you were saying, Rob, about the entry level position, right? And I think that automation does completely change that dynamic. And I think that the great thing is we have entities and individuals within our county that are thinking about that right now. We've got MSJC and Riverside Community College District and the desert colleges that are looking at, taking some of this funding that they're going to possibly get through the CARES Act and figure out how do we get people trained up to what is going to be needed in the next few years, right? To not just, for, the stuff that we've been talking about, the CTE programs and what have you, that this is different. This is like looking at right now, what's going on, what can we do to help the businesses right now get the workforce that they need and train up their workforce, but also looking at this as what's next, what is this next wave that's coming, and how do we get those, whether they're the recent high school graduates or, those who are out of work and might be one of those business sectors that's not necessarily going to get back anytime soon. So I think that there is a very concerted effort to kind of work with that business, that sector of the workforce, which I think is a huge benefit to us here in Riverside County. All right, that was a good one.
Well, I want to bring up, kind of piggyback on what Scott said earlier too, and just really reiterate that all of this needs to be tempered with a balance of customer service, because especially in our valley, we have a lot of smaller businesses that are privately owned, mom and pop shops here. It just really needs to be balanced with a good level of customer service. I had an experience a few weeks ago where I tried to book a face type of service, and the gal sent me away to her website to book my appointment, and the website didn't work. I mean, it was just like it was an entourage of different technology mishaps. And when I finally got the appointment booked, she had to let me know that date wasn't actually available. So it was just like, it was really a comedy of errors. and then she ended up losing a client. So I would just, anyone watching this, I would just say you just really need to balance any of your technology with a good dose of customer service and common sense too, by the way. If a customer is coming to you wanting to book an appointment, don't send them away off to a passive website and hope that they do that when you've got a live one on the phone right then and there. Do it right then and there. That should be common sense, but it just really needs to be balanced with good customer service at the same time.
Good points, Kimberly. Even though the automation's the wave of the future, you still got to have the soft skills. You got to have that personal touch, that relationships, the high-end restaurants. You want to be catered to, you want it to be taken care of. And businesses got to make that balance of how far they want to go with the automation. Having a hard time imagining the Walmart greeter being replaced with a robotic voice or something, along those lines. But
well, and sometimes technology fails.
That's right.
Right? I mean, usually when you least want it to, usually when you've got that warm customer right there on the phone and you send them away to your website, that's when your website's going to crash, or it's going to put in a date that's not actually available. So those are the challenges. Technology is not perfect, and Murphy's Law usually dictates it'll crash right when you don't want it to. So those are some of the challenges that I have found just as a consumer, trying to use some of these advances while we're on lockdown here. And it's, again, you give them the grace because you know that they're trying out something new in a lot of cases, and you're willing to go through that. But when we get back to normal times and see how much of this technology sticks, I think to Scott's point earlier and to mine as well, it really needs to be balanced with the soft skills too.
Yeah, one of the challenges I think there is with technology is no robot's ever going to understand urgency, right, Kim? So you're having an experience that's not going the right way, and a machine is only going to understand inputs and outputs of what the machine can understand. It's never going to understand that this is more important than that, and here's how I prioritize. And this is why I am very old-fashioned, like Rob, who in his first introduction here actually said, "Holy cow," which made me so happy with you, Rob Moran, for keeping it 50s, keeping it real. And
I wasn't actually around in the 50s, by the way.
No, I'm just saying but your soul was, and it is definitely an old soul from the 50s.
Oh boy, here we go.
So, yep, here we go. Here.
Technology, Scott. We're talking about technology.
Yeah.
We're talking technology and souls, and who's to say that a robot doesn't have a soul? You don't know that. Can't tell me where in your body is your soul. Do you know? No, it's immaterial. You don't know. So a robot could have one too. So let's not pick on poor robots. I'm already preparing to serve my robot overlords as they're coming to take over. So just have the proper amount of pandering.
This by picking on the robots.
I was celebrating the robotics, but and I don't know where I was going with this anymore. That conversation points.
Here you were going with this is that robots don't have a sense of urgency. So you were picking on the robots. But I will.
Garbage in, garbage out, I think is what you were trying to.
Yes,
no, robots. That's not what I was saying.
I disagree with you to an extent because this is that new wave, and AI is going to be part of this technology that's coming with it, and artificial intelligence is going to be able to do things like understand urgency and be able to address some of these different things, and those are some of the things that we can't just ignore and take for granted. I think those are some of the things that we have to kind of make sure that we're, up on what is going to be expected and what are the dynamics of what is going to be accessible or what is going to be, made possible by artificial intelligence. And I don't think we can kind of discredit that because then that hurts us in the long run.
Okay, fine.
Well, what'll be interesting is, how we've gotten so far beyond, even in today's world, a handwritten note and how much that means to somebody now. So it will be interesting as we move further and further into the automated and AI world, that those businesses that go back at some point and offer that true human to human experience might shine through differently than some of the ones that have gone fully automated, because it's something that we start to get nostalgic about, and you can't even believe that someone took the time to handwrite and snail mail, you put a stamp on and send you a card. I mean, some of us don't even remember how to do that, So it'll be interesting to see how that balances itself out with some of the industries.
You know, I'm more impressed with anybody who sends a text that was obviously not voice texted. I'm super impressed. It's like that personal touch that you get where they don't.
Like it's
they don't
spelled right,
accidentally-
Scott? It's spelled
not
correctly, no
It's
typos?
spelled correctly,
Yeah.
proper grammar and punctuation. That really blows my mind.
No,
We lost Christine.
I think, yeah, she had to.
The robots came to get her first.
I'm
Grant's
second. I got to
I
be right
definitely-
behind her.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that balance, though, it is the key. It's understanding both sides of it, you know. And Christine made a perfect point in that, you know, in the hospitality industry right now, there's a big, you know, struggle going on between that, because there is this generation of travelers that don't necessarily care or want interaction with others. They'll book everything online. They'll check in on their phone. They'll get their key on their phone, and the phone will open up their hotel room. They'll go, you know, to, you know, like if it's Yosemite, and they'll download an app, and they'll do everything in the park via their app, and they won't talk to another person because they're there to experience it for themselves. That's obviously one of the extremes, and then you do have the other side of it where someone wants to be catered the whole way. We have to be able to understand both sides of that and be able to balance them equally.
You know, Patrick, and part of that too is, you know, remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And
Yeah.
and you're going to probably always have somebody, you know, behind the counter to help out. But sometimes, you know, people are a little bit afraid to try the keyless entry into the hotel room. But once they've done it once, they'll never go to the front counter again.
Yeah.
But it may take them 2 or 3 years before they get to that point, because they're nervous about it for some reason, or they don't. If it doesn't work, they're fearful they're going to have to walk back to the front. But once they've done it, you know, it's like they're never going to wait in line again. They don't want to go. They don't want to have to. They just want to check in, go to their room. And so sometimes it's a gradual, and they, you know, there's a lot of early adopters and those that wait till the last minute. And then it you know, it can be a gradual thing. And I think that's what we found with a lot of technology. It's not flipping the switch on or off. It's really about, you know.
Don't say dimmer switch. Don't say it.
I'm not going to say it.
No, that's the thing is right now, it's not a dimmer. Right now,
He was describing a dimmer switch.
No,
It's gradual.
In business,
You can
but see, right now we're at a point where it's not gradual. Right now, we're being forced to do certain things.
It was
Right?
overnight.
Businesses are being forced to go to a QR code or go to, you know, the touch screens for
that's
it.
true.
They're being forced to do some of these things, and some will drop them when they have the opportunity to. But I have a feeling a lot of them are going to keep them because they see the importance of it, or they see the value in it for their business, whether it's for their customers or whether it's for themselves when it comes to the bottom line.
It'll be interesting too, like in Christine's example of that burger place, to see how much, you know, because the success of that place in particular is going to totally weigh on whether or not the robots get it right. If the burger tastes good, it has a value to it that, you know, people perceive as a value, or does the robot get it wrong every time and there's no one even, you know, I mean, it can really succeed or fail real fast depending on those factors. And some people are going to go there to check it out just for the notoriety of it. But if that's not a good tasting burger at a decent price at the end of the day, that's going to be the end of that. So
well, yeah, that's the thing is it a gimmick or is it truly an advancement, right?
Right. Are they getting one in Temecula, did she say? Because I want to go check it out. All right, let's go check it out and see. We'll report
Next time
back
we're
to everybody.
coming live.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about burgers. Now I'm hungry.
Live from the drive.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we took an automation and made this the most food-related conversation I've ever had.
My favorite subject.
Goodness.
We ended up talking about food a lot.
Apologies, team. I got to jump off too.
That's all right. I think this is a good place to end. I want to thank you all for joining us again this week. Join us again next week. We may have a special guest with us, so come back and see what we have to talk about. So,
automated mystery guest.
That's right.
There you go.
Thanks again.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Farewell.
See you later.